All right, hello and welcome. We're going to get into this Mercury retrograde reading for this happens on June 29th, 2026. So Mercury is going retrograde in Cancer, and this is an interesting pattern because it really circles around your relationship to one person in particular and how it affects your overall how it affects your career environment in a way that may not seem immediately obvious. This is something like a reemergence of like an old, probably childhood pattern relating to, if I had to guess, based on Cancer being the main sign in question here, something to do with your mother. So a pattern that was developed very, very early in life, probably before like a pre-verbal type of thing, something that you had likely have no memory of happening, that created this pattern that now reemerges in some way or another to affect your professional life. Now, because this is a general reading to kind of talk about the dynamic of this retrograde for all the signs, take some of the examples I give maybe with a grain of salt. To get more detail of how exactly this is going to show up for you, maybe watch the horoscope videos I'll be putting up for each sign, or if you want to get a private reading where we can look directly at your chart, that would give you a much more detailed picture of what's happening here. So you may be finding yourself in a situation where you kind of have to rely on someone else to do something that you can't quite do for yourself right now. This is You can see how that mirrors like this early childhood dynamic, like where your parents are essentially, as far as you're concerned, God. Like you have to rely on them for absolutely everything. So this sort of dynamic arises where you have to kind of hope that somebody it does what they're supposed to do, and there's a sense that like maybe they're not going to do it. It's taking them a long time. Somebody feels it seems like somebody's about to drop the ball here on something that maybe barely even affects them, but affects you in a big way. And this may be a situation where there's not a lot you can do about it other than, that there's an intense feeling like you need to like speak up about it. You need to, contact someone or like put out some kind of distress call or like kind of micromanage somebody else in order for them to do something that you feel that either they're supposed to do or maybe something you need them to do. But there's also a feeling of like you really don't want to do that because you feel like it might upset somebody. It might kind of create this dynamic where they're not really too pleased that you're sort of micromanaging or sort of rushing them or kind of trying to get them to do something for you that maybe they don't even necessarily have to, but so maybe you get what I'm trying to say here. And this retrograde happens to begin right at the same time as a full moon, where the sun is in Cancer and the moon is in Capricorn. So again, we have this idea of this affects your career environment in some way or another, even if it's not directly, like it's somebody at work. There is something about this dynamic that affects your career environment. And plus, Mercury retrograde is happening in the 10th house here. Um, and in a weird way, it seems like the subconscious is sort of projecting the early dynamic that you may have had with one of your caretakers onto someone else in your life. And just bringing up these old feelings of, I mean, it looks like a pretty powerful anxiety or just discomfort, of feeling like you need to sort of conform to what someone else needs from you in order to get them to do something that you need them to do. I know this is kind of general and vague, but the horoscope readings I'll be getting into later this next week will be a little more specific. Um, Now, at the same time, there's a situation where people may be looking upon you actually quite favorably, even if you don't necessarily see it right now. You might be wondering how you're being perceived in some ways with this Venus and Leo in the 10th house. There's kind of a general magnetic charm and warmth that's kind of coming from you that people can see from a distance. And whatever this other situation is, where that's bringing up this kind of anxiety in you, if you allow that feeling to sort of drive your actions and kind of repeat an old pattern, it kind of almost undermines the sort of positive perspective that's growing that other people are kind of beginning to see. The positive light that others are beginning to see you in. Maybe you're somebody who you're really good at dedicating yourself to your own specific talents. The very unique things that fearlessly dedicating yourself to the more unique aspects of who you are, even when it doesn't necessarily line up with what's expected, like the social norms or whatever. There's a strong dedication to that, like a fearless moving forward into the unknown, blazing paths into directions that others might feel like it's impressive that you're willing to face such uncertainty. But then all of a sudden, this other situation comes up, almost like the subconscious is almost trying to pull you back. Like you're making this stride forward of being willing to face the unknown in this really courageous way, while simultaneously the subconscious is like, no, don't do that. You're supposed to relive this pattern over and over again because that's what the subconscious does. It thinks in cycles and circles and tends to have a self-perpetuating mechanism. The same kind of thing that makes it so you don't have to relearn to walk every time you wake up in the morning. But this sometimes turns into an issue when it starts to revolve around like maladaptive patterns that may have been necessary when you were young, but then as an adult actually turn into a problem. So let's see here. And so this like early life pattern where you feel the natural urge or desire to take a certain action in relation to this particular feeling of, uh-oh, this person's not going to do what I need them to do, and it's something I can't at this moment really do for myself. Um, this could show up. I mean, anyway, again, this is like not this reading's not about the specific situation. This is the overall dynamic of what this Mercury retrograde is bringing up, and the horoscopes later will get more specific. Now, with Jupiter up here in the 10th house leaving Cancer, even if nobody even knows what it is exactly that you're dealing with internally right now, in some way that I'm not really entirely certain how to describe, the way you choose to handle this situation, this emotion that's arising, is going to show up in like it'll affect the way that you appear from a distance. Like people will be able to see a shift, a change in you from a distance, even if they have no idea what you did or did not do in relation to this situation. It's like the shift, that the emotional shift that this can bring about if you break this old cycle is visible to others, and causes you to almost carry yourself in a different way, which then leads to attracting different results in your life. So, in a way, most of the month of July comes down to how are you going to handle this sort of situation? Like, are you going to allow fear to drive your actions and kind of feed into this cycle that's been repeating for a long time? Or are you going to break the cycle by facing the unknown? And there's no guarantee that if you choose not to give in to this sort of urge that Dark Moon Lilith in the third house down here represents, and like say if it's your husband or wife or your partner, they're supposed to be doing something really important, but it seems like they're not going to do it, and it's making you feel real anxious. And there might be a tendency in the past where maybe you might kind of feel the need to kind of get on them about it, hound them about it, kind of like, hey, like do this thing, and then they get kind of irritated and they're like, oh, what, you don't trust me to do it? I say, so that kind of, if there's that sort of pattern, this is kind of what I'm talking about. Or maybe it's somebody at work, a coworker who like has dropped the ball in the past, where you're afraid they're not going to handle what they need to handle, and it's going to affect you, and you get on them, and it causes problems. Or I think you kind of get the overall dynamic that I'm trying to explain here. But there will be a significant like realization that comes along with this, with that Sun in the ninth house. Usually, the ninth house planets transiting the ninth house very often have to do with a shift, like a higher perspective. Like it takes a situation and gives you a higher perspective on it. And while there's no guarantee that if you leave this person alone or you don't resort to that pattern, that they are actually going to come through and do the thing you need them to do. But if there was a guarantee of that, it wouldn't exactly really be facing a fear now, would it? It would be just like, well, okay, I know it's gonna work out, so I don't have to worry about it. It's the fact that you don't know, that there is no guaranteed safety net. That's what makes it facing your fears. And when it comes to facing these subconscious fears that are rooted in like these very, very old childhood, like pre-verbal types of patterns, um, there's a very visceral feeling that comes along with that, and you kind of have to it has to be real. You have to face it in a very real way, and this is kind of an opportunity to do that. So it's kind of comes down to like how badly do you really want to break the cycle, like whatever cycle is coming up for you in this Mercury retrograde period. How badly do you want to break it? How much are you willing to risk? Um, because if it's really bad, you might feel like I will do anything. I don't care how bad things get. I cannot go through this cycle ever again. And so there's this willingness to just, you know, come whatever may and see where it goes. Or if it's something where you're like, I'd rather not, then, that's your choice as well. Anyways, I'm going to keep this video from going too long. I'm going to start working on the monthly horoscopes for all the signs. Check out those videos. Check out the website if you want to get a private reading. I offer tarot readings, horoscope, natal charts, progress charts. You can check it all out on the website. It's down in the description below. So if you like the video, remember to like and subscribe, leave comments. It really helps. So thanks for watching and take care. Bye.